The weight of 1,000 oceans does not merely press, it erases. Down here, in the lightless gut of the world where the pressure is a god that brooks no blasphemy, the very concept of a Viking, a man of wind, sun and sail, is an impossibility. Yet, the Jormungandr's bane does not know how to fail. It is a vessel born of desperation and star-thirst, its hull forged from the melted remains of a dozen fallen harvester ships, its ribs reinforced by the ancient bones of creatures that died before the first fire was struck on the surface. High King Alric the Abyssal gripped the steering oar, though no current moved it. The ship was guided by neural tethers, strands of glowing blue light that connected his very mind to the ship's star-metal brain. Every creak of the hull was a throb in his skull, every collision was a bruise on his soul. Behind him, the mistress of runes, Signy, stood within a circle of glowing amber stones, her hands weaving the invisible threads of the void shield that kept the crushing dark from turning them all into a red slurry of bone and salt. "We have passed the 12,000 fathom mark, Alric." Signy's voice wasn't spoken, it was a psychic ripple, vibrating through the alchemist's vapor that filled the pressurized cabin. The siphon's resonance is liquefying the stone of the trench floor. "We are entering the eye of the abyss." Ahead, the darkness died. It was replaced by a violent, screaming violet. The World-Siphon was a monument to a cold, cosmic hunger. It was a tower of rotating obsidian rings, 3 miles high, anchored into the very mantle of the earth. It roared with a subsonic frequency that shattered the glass portholes of the Bane, forcing the crew to rely on the spirit sight of the star-metal hull. The siphon was drinking the thermal energy of the Earth's core, funneling the warmth of the world into a beam of pure plasma that lanced upward toward a fleet of invisible harvesters in the high atmosphere. Alric, the Guardians. From the shadows of the rotating rings, the abyssal leviathans emerged. These were the true masters of the trench, titanic, biomechanical serpents hundreds of feet long. Their bodies were a nightmare of translucent armor and pulsating violet veins, their heads crowned with dozens of red lidless eyes that glowed like embers in a furnace. They moved with a terrifying, stuttering speed, defying the density of the water as they lunged toward the Viking intruder. "To the ballistas. Give them the cold iron." Alric commanded, his thought link triggering the ship's internal batteries. The Bane erupted in a symphony of blue lightning. 12 heavy ballistas, mounted along the star-metal rails, fired thunderbolts, projectiles tipped with hypercompressed ice and alien coolant. The bolts streaked through the dark, trailing arcs of cerulean electricity. A leviathan caught 3 bolts in its flank. The reaction was instantaneous. The supercoolant expanded, turning the creature's internal bioluminescent fluid into a jagged explosion of blue ice. The serpent shrieked, a sound that shattered the remaining ceramics on the ship, and disintegrated into a cloud of frozen meat and chrome shards. But the leviathans were a legion. They swarmed the hull, their massive, saw-toothed mandibles grinding against the void shield. The amber light of the runes flickered, turning a frantic, bleeding red as the shield strength bottomed out. "I cannot hold them, Alric. The pressure is feeding their hunger." Signy screamed, her nose beginning to bleed as she strained against the psychic load. Alric let go of the steering oar. He grabbed his void axe, a 2-handed weapon forged from the core rod of a mothership. He kicked the hatch lever, his pressurized suit hissed as it sealed, and he stepped out onto the open deck of the Bane. The water didn't crush him. The star-metal armor he wore generated its own localized gravity well, a bubble of defiance in the black. He stood at the prow, a lone silhouette of gold and black against the violet light of the siphon. A leviathan lunged, its maw wide enough to swallow a longship, its throat a vortex of grinding obsidian teeth. Alric didn't flinch. He swung the void axe in a gargantuan, overhead arc. The axe head hit the serpent's upper jaw. A supernova of white lightning exploded from the strike, the energy channeled directly from the ship's star-metal heart. The Leviathan's head didn't just break, it was unmade. A fountain of sapphire-colored ichor drenched Alric, boiling instantly in the heat of the discharge. The headless corpse of the beast tumbled into the rotating rings of the siphon, causing a cascade of mechanical sparks and grinding obsidian. Target the primary hub, the central ring. Alric leaped from the prow, propelled by the gravity thrusters in his boots. He was a human bolt of lightning flying through the pressurized dark. Around him, his warriors, men and women who had traded their lungs for ether gills, followed, their chain axes humming with a lethal frequency. It was a battle that mocked the laws of nature. Vikings in iridescent armor hacking through the biomechanical scales of sea monsters at the bottom of the world. Each swing of an axe released a burst of blue and orange fire that was instantly quenched by the cold, only to be replaced by the spray of alien blood. Auric reached the central ring. It was a massive rotating gear of black glass, humming with enough energy to power 1,000 civilizations. This was the pump. This was the throat of the theft. Signe. The runic charges. Signe, still on the deck of the Bane, triggered the remote deployment. 6 heavy casks of hell salt, a volatile mixture of naphtha, stardust and volcanic sulfur, were launched from the ship's belly. They were pulled toward the rotating ring by the siphon's own intake. The Leviathans sensed the threat. They converged on Auric, a wall of silver and red eyes. He planted his feet on the obsidian gear, his void axe glowing with a terminal white light. You want the marrow of the earth? Taste the fire of the raven. Auric slammed the axe head into the central axle of the ring, releasing the entire energy reserve of his suit and the ship's tether in a single catastrophic burst. At the same moment, the hellsalt casks entered the primary plasma intake. The reaction was a total erasure of the deep. The hellsalt didn't just explode, it catalyzed the violet plasma. The siphon tower didn't crumble, it suffered a reverse singularity. The violet light turned into a blinding, pure white. The rotating rings shattered, the obsidian shards flying outward with enough velocity to pierce the trench walls. The gravity wells that held back the sea failed. The millions of tons of water that had been displaced by the siphon's energy field rushed back in with the force of a collapsing star. Auric was hit by a wall of pressure that turned the world to black. He felt his star metal armor buckle, the runic shields shattering like glass. He was caught in the ascension void, a massive column of expanding gas and debris created by the siphon's implosion. The Jormungandr's Bane was caught in the same surge. The ship was propelled upward at a speed that would have vaporized a wooden vessel. The star metal hull glowed red-hot as it fought the friction of the water. Auric was pinned to the deck by the sheer force of the ascent, his vision fading, his lungs burning with the last of the alchemist's vapor. Fathoms passed in heartbeats. 10,000. 5,000. 1,000. The Bane broke the surface of the North Sea with a roar that could be heard from Norway to Greenland. The ship flew 50 feet into the air, a burning shard of black and gold, before crashing back into the waves. The silence that followed was heavy, a thick blanket of peace. Auric pulled himself up from the flooded deck. He coughed, spitting out a mouthful of blue-stained salt water. He looked at his hands, the star metal gauntlets were melted, his skin raw and blistered. He looked at the horizon. The sky was a pale, honest blue. The unnatural auroras were gone. The violet static that had plagued the stars for centuries had vanished. The sun was rising, a deep, natural gold that felt warm against his face for the first time in his life. Signe crawled out of the wreckage of the runic circle. Her hair was white, bleached by the psychic surge, but she was smiling. She pointed to the water. The massive whirlpool that had marked the great trench was gone. The sea was flat, calm and silent. The thrumming in the earth had ceased. The harvesters had been disconnected. Their straw into the world had been snapped, and the deep had reclaimed its own. Auric sheathed the broken handle of his void axe. He didn't look back at the abyss. He looked toward the coast of Scandinavia, where the green of the pines was finally visible through the receding mist. There would be no more raids for alien gold. There would be no more sacrifices to the sea gods. The Jormungandr's Bane was a ruin, a hollowed-out skeleton of star metal, but it was floating. It was a boat again. Auric sat on the prow and watched the sun climb higher. He felt the rhythmic, slow movement of the tide, the natural, unhurried pulse of the earth. The weight was gone. The pressure was over. The Vikings had found the bottom of the world and realized that the earth was enough. The iron is cold. The runes are dark. The salt is dry. The waves carry the wreckage away, the blue ichor of the Leviathans dissolving into the vast, indifferent blue of the Atlantic. The sea remains a secret, a deep and silent mother that has closed her eyes to the stars. We are the men of the north and we have brought the fire home. The horizon is empty, the water is deep, and the world is finally, mercifully, our own. The sun is warm. The wind is sweet. The end is peace.